Happy morning, friends. Here's yours, Dr. Ajanta. Welcome to day 27 session. Today we are just going to see about Python for loop. Loop in Python. Loops in Python programming function similar to loops in C, C++, Java or other languages. Python loops are used to repeatedly execute a block of statement until a given condition returns to be false. In Python, we have two types of looping statement. One is for loop and next it's while loop. Python for loop. In this session, we are just going to learn about the iteration over the sequence of elements using the different variation of for loop. We use a for loop when we want to repeat a code block for a fixed number of times. And the for loop in Python is used to iterate over a sequence where iterating over the sequence which is called as traversal. Why to use for loop? Here are some information. Definite iteration. When we look how many times we wanted to run a loop, then we use count controlled loop such as for loop. It is also known as definite iteration. For an example, calculate the percentage of 50 students. Here we know we need to iterate a loop 50 times. That is one iteration for each student. Next, reduce the code's complexity. See, loop repeats a specific block of code a fixed number of times. It reduces the repetition of lines of code, thus reducing the complexity of the code. Using for loops and while loops, we can automate and repeat tasks in an efficient manner. And the third one, loop through sequence, which is used for iterating over lists, strings, tuples, dictionaries, etc., and performs various operations on it based on the condition specified by the user. Here are the exact syntaxes provided, dear friends. Kindly have a look of it. For and to that of element in sequence. And here is the body of the for loop. First element is the variable that takes the value of the item inside the sequence on each iteration. Second, all the statements in the body of the for loop are executed with the same value. The body of for loop is separated for the rest of the code using the indentation. Finally, the loop continues until we reach the last item in the sequence. And the body of the for loop is separated for the rest of the code using the indentation, and once for all, if the exact last line or last item of the sequence is executed, it just comes to the end of the for loop. Let me just see it with an example, dear friends. See here, word is the variable which is declaring with a list of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. There are the elements, and here we are just going to initiate the I as the element in the words, and it just iterate each and every element, go through it and make the operation. And here the operation is, it has to print it, so it just execute the print function of every element inside the word function. Okay, next let me just calculate the average of list of numbers. And see here, dear friends, we are having the numbers as 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. And here it is the definite iteration that we are having only 5 items in the number, that is in the list. And when we just make use of that numbers, okay, here we are just making as we want to calculate the average. First we have to make the summation of that every element, and then we have to divide it by the number of the element. That is what the average is. So here we need to make two functions. One is to sum of the element, that is total element. Total element here it is 5 elements, and to the sum we have to divide it by the sum of, that is the number of elements, that is the list size. So here these two variables that has been declared, and here it is calculating the sum by each and every iteration. It just makes one by one the element and make up the summation. Once for all it is done, the summation is divided by the length of the numbers, that is elements in the list, and once for all it just executes the output as 30.0. Next comes the for loop with range function. See here, dear friends, the range function returns a sequence of number starts from the 0 by default if the initial limit is not specified, and it increments by 1 as it is by default until the final limit is reached. The range function is used with a loop to specify the range how many times the code block will be executed. And here it is an example. See here, dear friends, we can generate a sequence of number by using this range. And here the function is just a range of 5. Will generate numbers from 0 to 4, that is it's not includes the 5, so totally 5 numbers. So it just makes that it starts from the 0 and stops at 5, and it just makes the increment of 1 by 1. Yeah, to be true, the range function is lazy in sense because it does not generate every number that it contains when we create it. However, it is not a iterator since it supports length of and get item operations. This range function does not store all the values in the memory. It would be inefficient. So it remembers the start, stops, and the step size and generate the next number on the go. We can also define the start, stop, and set size as range of start, stop, and step size. And here the step size is default to 1 if not provided. Okay, let me just see it with an example, dear friends. See here, when we just make use of a empty range, that is how range works in here is, here when we just make an empty range, that is a 0. And what would be our list? Yeah, it is an empty list. And if we just make a range up to 10, and see here this list, it would just have 10 elements that is initiated from 1 to 9. And if we make the same thing by specifying the start and the stop, so see here the start is 1 and the stop is 10. So from 1 to 10 it just makes the list element. And let me just make the execution. See here, dear friends, the first one is the empty list and second one is the list which has the 10 element and starting from the 0 as a default, and as it is a 10 element it just stops at 9. And last one, it just provide the specified thing that is starting from 1 and ending till 10. Okay, let me just make the for loop with a different interesting way. See here, I just want to make a num which is the range of 10, and here each and everything it has to be printing one by one. And this iteration, what it just makes is, so here it just take a number of 10, so defaultly starts with 0, and as it is 10, so 0 to 9 it has to make the list. And here when on just printing, yeah, we just get one by one printed in this manner. You can also make the same thing as previously we have just said, yeah, by specifying the start and the ending range. And see here, dear friends, previously it was just default with 0, started with 0 and totally 10 elements. So it's 0 to 9. And here the starting is 1 and ending is 11. And as this makes the list as 1 to the 10. And next comes, see here, dear friends, we have the full description of the range, starting, stopping, and the step size. As here, the step size specified as 2. The step size is specified as 2. It just makes the incremental by 2. So the 2 plus 2, 4 plus 2, 6 plus 2, in the sense it just starts from 2 till 12, and here is the output. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and it doesn't reach with the 12. So before that range ends, it just comes out of the for loop. And next, see here, dear friends, here it is also one more interesting, that is the range starts from 1 and ends with 6, and here we are having a num is equal to 2, the same the above, where we just specified the start and stop, and here we are just making the start and stop, but the num is equal to 2, which here it's make the execution, that is the print function makes the execution of num into 8. And we have already know that, as if we just make 1 into 6, 1 to 6, if we make the incremental of 2, it would be as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here it just makes from the default of incremental, but when just coming to num into 8, yeah, the execution would be so different as to the above, as 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Okay, here is the next example, dear friends. I just want to make the summation of 10 numbers. So, okay, defaultly we are just specifying the initiation of the sum is equal to 0, and when the num n is starting from the range of 1 to 11. So here how the exact summation means is from 1 to 10, it just makes the 10 numbers, and each and every time whenever the number makes the iteration by step default of 1, the step size default of 1, the exact summation would be done, and at last the total summation of the 10 numbers has to be displayed. So here, see here, dear friends, this is the exact formation of the value when at last it's just going to make the execution. So see here, let I just execute it. So 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21, 28, 36, 45, and 55. And once for all, you can also just make use of the print function like this to be outputted. Okay. Next, let me just make a printing a series of number using for and range. So case 1, I just want to make print numbers from 0 to 4, and here the incremental is just 1 incremental, and the next particular starting as 5 till 10, and the next one the same thing, it starts with the 5 and ends with 0, and here the step size is 2. So 3 types of series we want to just make the execution, and everything was differentiated with the description as case 1, case 2, case 3. Let me just execute it, and just to see, dear friends, see, it is defaultly 5, so 0 to 4 the in the exact list elements, and here each and every one we have the default of step size 1. And secondly, we are not making the limit, but here we are just specifying the start and ending, that is the start and stop, and we didn't provide the step size, so defaultly it just takes us 1, and here it's the output as 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And when coming to the last one, it just starts with 5 and ends with 10, whereas the step size is 2, so 5, 7, and 9. Here it's the output. Okay, let me just see the next one, dear friends. If loop with if else. See, a for loop can have an optional if else block. So the if else checks the condition of the condition and if the condition is true, if executes the block of the code presents inside, and if block and if condition is false, so it will execute the block of code present inside the else block. And see here, dear friends, here we are just having the exact example. So for I in range of 1 to 11, and if I modulus 2 is equal to 0, so then we have to print the even number. Else it's just going to be an odd number. Okay, so here each and every times it's just going to start from 1 defaultly until 11, that is totally 10 numbers. It's just going to print as whether it is even or odd number. And let me just see the execution. Kindly have a look of this, dear friends. And next comes the for loop with else. And see here, dear friends, when just coming with else, a for loop can have optional else block as well. The else part is executed if the items in the sequence used in the for loop exhaust. And here the exact else block will be skipped when two times. One is the for loop terminates abruptly, or the break statement is used to break the for loop. And see here, dear friends, here we are just having the uh, example where the digit has 0, 1 and 5. That is three elements we are just having, and each and every element we are just going to take as an iteration in the loop to make the for. And see here, if it is not having any elements, or once of all, here the for loop prints item of the list until the loop exhausts, that is the three element. When the for loop exhausts, it executes the block of the code in the else and prints, that is no elements left. And see here, when on just making this execution, kindly have a look that how this happens. So once after exhausted this list, it goes defaultly to the else, because we are not having any informations or any statements to get terminated. And next, one more example here, dear friends, kindly have a look of this, where this exact block code snippet just shows that for number in range, that we are just going to get 11 elements, where 11 elements in the sense 0 to 10, which is not going to include the 11th one. And once after the execution of that 11 elements, it's just going to abruptly come to the loop stops at the number that we are just going to have it. So anyhow, it's just going to print from 0 to 10, and which is not going to include the 11th, and we are not having any terminated statements, so it just falls on to the last statement, that is the loop stops at its 10. And see here it is the output. Yeah, kindly have a look of this, dear friends. And next comes the one with else block in for loop, that is here to the same. The I ranges from I and stops at 6, and once for all, if it just going to execution of every number, and that is every number in the sense from 1 to 5, it just not going to include the sixth one, that is the last number, and it just exhausts the block and then comes to the done. Let I just execute it. See here, dear friends, this is what. And next, one more thing is that, see here, the for else statement can be used with break keywords, or the else block would be can have break keywords which was not executed. And once after making the summarization of the that is the break or past statement or continued statement, we can just come revisit the break statement. And here I just want to give you some more examples which uh, other than the break and continue is inclusion. Okay. Next, going for the reverse in loop. And see here, dear friends, till now we have learned about forward looping in for loop with various examples. Now we will learn about the backward iteration of the loop. See, sometimes we require to do reverse looping while is quite useful. For example, to reverse a list, there are three ways are there. One is reverse for looping using range, and reverse for loop using the reverse, and there comes the exact with the functions, that is the reverse mode of indexing. Okay, and see here, dear friends, let me just see one by one with the example. The first example, which it just shows the uh, revise, that is the backward iteration using the reversed function. We can use the built-in function reversed with for loop to change the order of element, and this is the simplest way to perform a reverse looping. And kindly see here, dear friends, 10, 20, 30, 40 is the element in the list, and when we want to just make it into a reverse, yeah, from the backward we can make use of the reversed keyword. And see here the execution. And next comes the reverse for loop using range. We can use the built-in function range with the for loop to reverse the elements order. The range generates the integer number between the given start integer to the stop integer. And see here, dear friends, let me just see it with an example. And print reverse number using the for loop. And see here, num is equal to 5, and stop, start, and steps are just provided, whereas the step which we just defaultly would be 1, and when on just making the reverse, here it is specified in negative. And see here, dear friends, here the num is going to start with 5, and it is just want to stop at -1, and here the step size also specified as -1. And when on just execution, just kindly have a look of this, that is starting with 5, when on just incrementing with -1. Okay, incrementing with -1, it just gives the reversing order of the elements. And next one, see here, dear friends, there are many helper functions that makes for loop even more powerful and easy to use. And for example, enumerate, the function enumerate. See here, dear friends, let me just see it with an example. Here I just want to make a print of reversed. Okay, let I just give the exact word A B C. Okay, and ABC using the reverse keyword, I'm just printing it ABC. And to make a small separation, here I'm just including colon for each and every element once after execution. And next one, yeah, using the enumeration, there also we can just make use of the ABC. And here we can just provide the main thing is in the sense that we can just provide the index of each and every element by specifying on to make a description way. And one more new function, that is zipped. And here too the zip, you can just make use of it. And when on just making the zip, here the loop, that is the variable which you can just make use of the exact keys or ABC, and to that of value, here you can just specify the XYZ. And each and every time when you just make the pair of key and values, you can just inclusion of colon, and each and every line the exact statement has to be executed. Let me just see it one by one with an output. See here, dear friends, here it is the reversed keyword where it just provide the C, B, A as the output of A comma B comma C, and next it just gives the enumeration values, and last the resultant of JIT. Thank you, dear friends.